what's interesting about depression, and again, I'm a nerd, right? So I'm going to go into cellular communication and immunology a little bit. But what's really interesting about depression is that when you look at major depressive disorder, there is a cytokine that is upregulated and it's called interleukin 6. Interleukin 6 is a pro inflammatory cytokine. Not only is it implicated in depression, but it's also implicated in asthma.
Wow.
When you look at the type of inflammation that exists in your body, and I've talked about this before, there's type 1, there's type 2, there's type 3. Type 1 inflammation is associated with interferon. It's responsible for dealing with intracellular pathogen. That is, a virus binds to your cell, clears that cell, clears that pathogen. There's type 2 inflammation, which evolved to protect us from parasites, right? That means that some of those nematodes, those tapeworms, things like that, eosinophils are important to be able to eliminate those. That's a part of type 2 inflammation. In the Western world, heavily associated with allergy and asthma. So if you look at atopic dermatitis, type 2 inflammation is involved. If you look at asthma, 84% of asthmatics have type 2 inflammation. However, there's also type 3 inflammation. Now, type 3 inflammation is secondary to what's called interleukin 17 and interleukin 20 and interleukin 22. It's a Th17 type of inflammation, also associated with interleukin 6. That leads to the increase of neutrophils. So when you look at asthma in general, depression is going to increase your interleukin 6 levels. Interleukin 6 is associated with this type 3 inflammation, this neutrophilic inflammation, which can lead to neutrophilic asthma. And so that's one of the things that I think is important is these patients that have depression may have asthma as well. When you look overall at interleukin 6's activity in general, there are multiple receptors for interleukin 6 within the brain. And when you have interleukin 6 around, these receptors are going to be activated and can lead to worsening depressive symptoms. Interleukin 6 also increases your cortisol level, which is also present in depression as well. It interferes with dopamine, it interferes with serotonin, it interferes with glutamate. These are all neurotransmitters that have an effect on your nerve endings and fibers in your brain. So, again, the way it specifically affects serotonin is what ends up happening is interleukin 6 increases a certain enzyme in your brain. It's called indoleamine dioxygenase. Indoleamine dioxygenase. Doesn't matter, it's just the name of an enzyme. But what this enzyme is responsible for is it takes tryptophan, which is amino acid, away from being a part of serotonin production. So you don't produce serotonin. And if you don't produce serotonin, as we talked about, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which increases the amount of serotonin in that synapse, you're not going to have that serotonin in that synapse, and that's going to lead to depression too. And so that's one of the major issues is that there's a pro-inflammatory component. There's a cellular inflammatory component to depression that's not often thought about. If you look in the future, there was actually a study done in patients that had rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune disease that affects the joints, and 40% of patients with rheumatoid arthritis develop interstitial lung disease. Anyway, 15 to 40%, whatever. They gave a molecule that inhibits interleukin 6. The molecule is called, hold on, it'll come back to me. I think it's tocilizumab. This molecule, toci or tocilizumab, inhibits interleukin 6. Turns out patients that were on this molecule for rheumatoid arthritis, specifically for rheumatoid arthritis, had less depression than patients who were not on this molecule. So it just begs the question of, oh man, if this is a cellular inflammatory, pro-inflammatory type of condition, like can combination therapies, not only SSRIs and SNRIs, things of that nature, can we combine these with cellular communication inhibitors and improve outcomes in these patients? And it's being studied.
That's awesome. And I'm actually not surprised because we know inflammation in general is tied to so many different chronic diseases. So having depression be one of them, it's not surprising to me. And I think it just draws more attention to living a lifestyle that helps really decrease our inflammation overall.